Hey boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, Facebookers, my Facebook tribe, hello, good to see you all. I'm out here in downtown Vancouver, actually just passing a place. When I was a kid, when we weren't allowed to swear in the house, because we weren't allowed to swear, you got your mouth washed out with soap if you swore. So there were many words which today are kind of accepted, but back then were not okay. And one of those words, when I was a kid, was fart. We weren't allowed to say we farted. Now we don't mind if kids say, well, I don't mind if kids say that they farted, but that was not a word that was allowed to be said when we were kids. You couldn't say I farted. So, when we were kids, the word we were allowed to use was this. Might surprise you. And I'm going to just show you this, and then we'll tell you what it is. This is a brand new building in Vancouver. I'm going to show you now. Now I know you can't see what it says up there because it's covered up. But maybe you can guess. Maybe you can make out a T-R-U-M-P. Yes, this is the new Trump building, the new Trump Tower in Vancouver that is going up. The new Trump Tower that's going up here in Vancouver. It's not quite finished, but almost finished. So what has that got to do with not being able to swear as a kid? Well, as I said, when we were kids, we weren't allowed to swear, and we certainly weren't allowed to use the word fart. That was a bad word, you couldn't use that. As kids, what we used to say is, I trumped. I think that that's pretty funny. I've certainly heard people describe Donald Trump as a shit, but I don't think I've ever heard anybody describe him as a big wet fart. But thinking about it, and honestly I never thought of it until this very moment as I was walking down Georgia Street here past the new Trump building, thinking, oh my God, that was the word we used for fart when we were kids. So, welcome to Fart Tower, might be another way of saying it. Alright, let's say what I was going to talk about tonight. Now before I do that, I want you to know, now we're syndicating, hopefully we're syndicating these broadcasts out across multiple pages, so you should be getting your notices that I'm broadcasting live, and I really hope you are, and that would be great if you are, because then you can know about it right away. If you're not, you can simply go to Dove Baron Leadership, click on the like on that page, click on notifications, turn on the notifications, and Facebook will let you know when I'm broadcasting, okay? And of course, if you want to get a hold of the Matrix that I'm giving away right now, it's at matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. You can find it there. All right, so that is the Matrix assessment. So you're able to assess your own leadership, the authentic leadership, in 5 separate categories. So, what am I going to talk about today? Well, as the title says, what if they're wrong? What if all the experts are wrong? What if they got it dead wrong? Who thought about that? You know, I've been into health and fitness and being a bit of a fitness freak and health nut only for about 30 years. No, actually closer to 40 years. I just realized that. Jesus, I'm old. Anyway, so, you know, over those years of following health and fitness since I was in my 20s, there's been all kinds of interesting theories that have come up regarding what is the right thing to do to be healthy, to be fit, etc., etc. You know, and you can imagine this, you probably remember many of them yourself. There's a new trend every 10 minutes. However, back in the mid-late 90s, the Time magazine produced an article, and the article was on the theory that calories are not equal and that fat makes you fat. So if you wanted to become slim and healthy, you would have to stop eating fat. That was the idea. You have to stop eating fat. You have to stop doing that. Now, actually that was in Time magazine, and it was written about as a theory, nothing more. However, it revolutionized the food industry. Totally revolutionized it. And as a result, we got flooded with fat-free foods. Every market had fat-free foods. There was always a fat-free version of whatever used to be available. You know, you had Lay's baked chips and all those kinds of things instead of the usual, right? So we got all this fat-free stuff. Now, what happened as a result of that revolution is very simple, is that we got very fat. That as a culture, particularly in North America, obesity has gone through the freaking roof, in case you haven't noticed. And similarly accelerated in many other countries throughout Europe and most first world countries that have created more and more highly processed foods. So what's the crack? If we are supposed to get rid of the fat foods to stop being fat, how come people got fatter as a result of that? In the body, there are several hormones. First of those hormones, many of hormones, but the first of the ones I'm going to talk about is a hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin is, you know when you get that growly, that's why the name's a good name actually, it's easy to remember, that growly feeling in your gut because you're hungry? That's ghrelin. That's the hormone ghrelin. That fires off in your body and tells you that you're hungry. Now, how do you turn that off? You would say, by eating. That is true, but not entirely true. You see, that hormone is turned off by another hormone called leptin. Leptin turns off ghrelin. Now, leptin turns off ghrelin, but leptin is fired off in the system, so your body actually notices that it's full and fires off the leptin. It does that when you have fat in your system. So if your diet is fat-free, if you don't have enough fat in your system, then the leptin doesn't fire off and the ghrelin continues. And that's why you find yourself eating bags and bags and bags of chips. You just can't stop because there's not enough ghrelin, there's not enough leptin firing off in the system to cancel out the ghrelin. Now, how many years did you avoid fats? How many years were you told that fats are going to make you fat? How many experts, how many diets, how many people on Oprah or on any other show were on there telling you that you've got to get rid of the fats, you've got to get rid of the fats? And now there's a revolution, and it's a wonderful revolution because it's waking us up to the idea, to the concept and to the reality that your body actually needs fats, and it particularly needs healthy fats, okay? And many of the fats that we thought were bad for us, like coconut oil because it goes hard in cold weather, is actually really good for you, particularly good for you, and all kinds of benefits and bonuses. Now, I'm not telling you all this to give you an education about eating. That's your choice. You can do whatever the heck you like. In fact, if you really want to find out about what I'm talking about with healthy fats, talk to my mate Tony Cohen. Tony just did a video. He talks a lot about this. He's part of a company that takes care of these kinds of things. And Tony actually just did a great video. You can go find it on Tony Cohen's channel, where he talks about how we've been misled. And his last video was called Fuck Glucose, which I think is really great because the body has two forms of energy systems. One is a glucose energy system, which creates diabetes and all kinds of problems for too many people, and most of the nutritional
advice that's given to diabetics is actually based in glucose, which is terrible. But your body has an alternate system, which is a ketogenic system, and it uses ketogenic fats to be healthy. Anyway, all that is really good. You should find out about it. It's really good. I'm not telling you that so you can get an education in your diet. Although that's great. If it does and it helps you, fantastic. That would be really good. Okay? So find out about it. I'm bringing this to you because I want you to ask yourself the question, what if they are wrong? What if the experts are dead wrong? Mary was the leader of her community. It was a small community, beautiful village in a valley between two mountains. She'd never left that valley. She grew up in that valley and was very bright, very driven. And she'd risen through the ranks of her community and with a lot of respect had done a lot of things to help a lot of people within her community and had led that community and gone on to actually become the leader of the community. And like all great leaders, she had herself surrounded by other good thinkers, great thinkers, and particularly people who would guide her and advise her. She realized by the time she got to about 29, 30 years old that she'd never left the valley. She'd never gone anywhere. And she often would sit in the middle of that valley looking at the mountains above her and around her and wondering what life was like out there. So one day she had a meeting. She sat with all of her advisors and asked them, do you think we should be exploring beyond the village? Because people don't seem to come into this village and people don't seem to leave this village. Do you think we should be exploring outside of the village? And all of her advisors, all of her experts said, absolutely not. We are self-sustaining. We don't need anybody else. We don't need any outside influence. We don't need all that negativity. We don't need any of those things. This is a great place. You should stay here. You are the leader of this community. This community needs you. And there's nothing out there that you need. Well, she was struggling. She's troubled. Because she felt this pull, this desire to explore beyond the village. But all of the experts, all of those around her said that was a stupid thing to do. And so she listened to them. And she carried on leading. And she heard the same thing you and I do, which is be grateful. Be grateful. Be grateful for what you've got. What you've got is really good. You don't have to trade it in for anything else. There's nothing to fix here. Everything's good. Leave it as it is. It's good. She couldn't. She couldn't sleep. It bothered her all the time. So then one day, she woke up at the crack of dawn with this hunger in her heart, this desire in her being to explore, to find out more, to know what was beyond the village. And so, she got up early that morning. She packed a backpack and she began to hike into the mountains. She climbed up to the top of the mountain. After a whole day of traveling and climbing and scrambling and getting cut and hurt and sometimes feeling just like giving up because damn, it was just too hard. And you know what? It was really comfy and safe back in the village and she could go back to that village and she had a lot of doubts. But she kept going. And finally she reached the top of the mountain. When she got to the top of the mountain, she could see how little, how tiny her village was. And she looked the other way and saw how vast the view was. How many more things were in front of her that she'd never even seen, never even considered before. It was enticing to her. And out there, way, way out there in the distance, she saw this. As the sun rose, she saw this glimmering, this flickering light. She didn't know what it was. But it was totally intriguing, and she definitely wanted to find out what it was, but it was way off. Much further than where she had come from. But she decided, this is the adventure. I already began the journey, so I'm going to keep going. But she was tired. She traveled all day. She traveled through the night, and this was the next morning. She decided she'd rest for that day. So she rested for that day at the top of the mountain. And she was surprised because as she rested, she found that she met all kinds of people. And the people she met all lived on top of the mountain. And they asked her where she was from, and she told them she was from the village, and the village was beautiful and that she was the leader of the village. But she felt this yearning to travel, to discover more and find out what else was there. And they told her, oh, you've made the right move. This is a fabulous place. Top of the mountain here, you cannot beat this view. Look at this. This is outstanding. You can see how beautiful the village is down there from you. But you're up here. I mean, you've got this clean air. There's no air like this air. This is the most beautiful air. What a blessing it is to be here. You should be grateful that you made it to here. Just be grateful. There's nowhere else to go. There's nothing to fix here. This is the place to be. And so she decided, you know what? Maybe they're right. I mean, it is very beautiful, so she stuck around. And she stuck around, and within a few weeks, people were talking to her and discovering how wise she was, and how smart she was, and how insightful she was. And within a very short period of time, she became the advisor. She became the wise one of this top of the mountain community. And it felt really good, so she stuck around a little bit more. She stayed a little longer than she'd originally planned to stay, but it was good. It was a nice place to stay, and she was enjoying it. But as she was enjoying it, every now and then she would look out at that view, and she would see that glimmering light in the distance. And once again, she would feel that yearning to go towards, away from even the top of the mountain here. She would have to go down the mountain, and out in the opposite direction to which she came, she would have to go all that way. And again, everybody around her said, don't go. You don't need to go. This is great. There's nothing out there. Nothing you are missing. Nothing to fix. This is a good place to be. And one morning, once again, she awoke at the crack of dawn. And the hunger to discover what else there was there. So she left. She left the top of the mountain. She traveled down the mountain and across the plains. And she found this beautiful place where a river, several streams came together, and there was a river, and there was a beautiful community there, and people were growing crops like she'd never seen, and people were kind, and they were gentle, and they played beautiful music, and it was just so wonderful there. And she immediately felt welcomed by everybody, and in fact people made a parade to welcome her, and she felt so good there, and they fed her like food she had never even tasted. It was so delicious, so marvelous, so wonderful. And everybody there was kind and thoughtful and helpful, and it was just beautiful. She loved, loved, loved being there. So there she is in this wonderful place on the flats by the river where all the streams meet. And everybody's talking to her about how beautiful this clear, this mountain water is, because it comes all the way down the mountain, gets cleaned, and it's beautiful. And there's these beautiful fish there that they catch, and it's magnificent. And they tell her how wonderful it is, and they tell her there's nowhere else to go. And she begins to think, you know what, I think I've heard this before. There is nowhere else to go. This is a beautiful place. And you're right. This is magnificent, and there is nothing to fix. But she knew there was a yearning inside of her. And this time she said, no, you know what, I can't stay. I got to keep going. And they said, where are you going to go? And she said, I'm going to go out there to where that flicker of light is, that place where the light is. It seems to call to me. There's something about this place. It just calls to me, and I've got to go to this place. And they said, don't be ridiculous. There is nothing out there. There is nothing at all out there. This is the place to say, it's beautiful here, it's magnificent here. Where are you going to go? All the experts told her she was crazy, but she went anyway. She got up and she went, and she left, and she traveled, and she kept traveling in the direction of that light, that flickering light. And as she got closer and closer, she began to see that light was where the sun was bouncing off the ocean. She followed the path of the river all the way until it met the ocean. That flickering light bounced off the flat of the ocean. It was so magnificent, so beautiful. And she stopped to take in all the view. And where she stopped was the town. Beautiful town, seaside town, gorgeous town. And she said, clearly I've made it. This is the place. This is where I got to be. And she felt like, wow, she'd really journeyed a long way. She felt proud of herself. It was magnificent. She could look back all the way she could see in the distance that mountain in the opposite direction, and realized that she'd been on the top of that mountain. She realized that she'd been on the other side of that mountain, that she'd been a leader of that village, and everybody had told her, not to leave. In each of the places she stopped, everybody said, don't go, this is the place to be. And here she was in this seaside village. It was so beautiful, seaside town, so magnificent. The sea air smelled so good. The food here was fantastic. The people were so wonderful and friendly. There was music, there was dancing. It was awesome. And she clearly thought she'd made it. She thought, this is it, I'm here, I've done it, I've made it. And so she moved in a place, she found a place, she moved in, she got this place together, she set up home, she felt so good. In fact, she even fell in love. She fell in love with a magnificent person, became her partner in life. And one day they sat around after about 2 or 3 years, and they began talking about her adventures, about where she'd been and how she'd traveled and what all that was about. And in that conversation, something was awakened again within her, that hunger, that desire for the journey. But there was nowhere else to go. She could see that, you know, that's the ocean. You can't go past the ocean. But on this particular day, her and a partner went down to the beach, and they stood on the beach and realized that she'd never felt the sand between her toes, and how beautiful and magnificent that was. And her partner talked about how magnificent it was. But she saw people in the water, and she said, I wonder what it's like in the water. And he said, no, we don't go in the water. We're from the seaside town, we don't go in the water. The water's dangerous. There's all kinds of crazy things out there. You go in that water, you're gonna really get sucked in, there's gonna be problems. Do not go in that water. Look how safe and kind and wonderful it is right here in the seaside town. What the hell do you think you're doing? Don't go to the water, that's foolish. But she just had to. So she slipped off her shoes, she pulled up her skirt, and out she walked into that magnificent, beautiful turquoise water. She stepped into the ocean, and it was amazing. And the water lapped around her ankles, and it just felt so good. And she noticed other people playing in the water, and they were playing in the water with her, and they were telling her how wonderful it is, and that they always spend every day in the water. They love the water. It's a wonderful thing to have. This is the place to be. If you've not been here, you've missed it all. And she's like, you're absolutely right. I never even knew this existed. And she begins to tell them that she came from the village, and from the village she was on top of the mountain. From top of the mountain she was in the flatlands, and everywhere was beautiful. And then she eventually made it to the seaside town, and that was wonderful. And she became a leader in each of these places. And now here she was, not only on the beach, but in the water. And her lover was standing back on the beach and was not coming in that water. And they said, well, you know, this is the place to be. And as she's paddled around in the water and enjoying it so much, she saw somebody doing something very strange. She saw somebody with a boat, pushing the boat into the water. And she said, well, what are you doing? He said, I'm going out into the ocean. You're going out into the ocean? You can't do that, can you? And he said, yeah, it's fantastic. It's so beautiful out there. And she said, I've never been out there. I've never experienced that. What is it like? And he begins to tell her about the amazing experience of floating on top of the ocean. Wow, this sounds amazing. And all the people who are in the water with her say to her, listen, don't go out there. I mean, here you're fine. It's just, you know, ankle, maybe knee deep. You're okay. It's good. Listen, you've had an amazing experience. You've come all the way from there. Listen, you just got to be grateful for what you have. This is amazing. Look how far you've come. Look how much you've traveled. It's awesome. There's nowhere else to go. What the hell would you put yourself in danger going out there on the ocean? Do you know that there are waves out there? Do you know that there are all kinds of dangerous things out there? You could fall off the boat. You could get eaten by a shark. Forget it. Don't go. And the man with the boat said to her, there's another adventure. You just got to go claim it. So despite what all the experts who paddled in the water said to her, she got in the boat. She went out into the ocean. And it was fantastic. It was magnificent. And the boatman said to her, do you realize there is another experience? And she said, another experience? What do you mean? He goes, isn't it beautiful here on the water? And she said, yes. And he said, did you ever imagine it could be this beautiful when you lived in the village, or when you climbed the mountain, or when you went to the flatlands, or even when you lived in the seaside town or paddled in the water? She said, no. He said, there's even more. She said, what do you mean? He says, get in the water. I'll give you a snorkel. You can see below the surface. She felt fear. She felt excitement at the possibility of it, but she felt fear of what it could be. She remembered what they said back there, that there were sharks and things that could eat her. But she decided she wanted to do it. So she slipped on the flippers, and she slipped on the snorkel and the mask, and she slipped into the water. And she looked below the surface, and there were thousands of beautiful tropical fish, greens and blues and turquoises and oranges and reds, and all these amazing animals that were swimming right there, right below the surface, that she could never have possibly even seen. They were invisible to her while she sat on the surface, but now she was in the water, looking down into seeing it. And she popped her head back up to the man in the boat, and she said, "This is amazing. Thank you so much. I never knew this even existed. This is so exciting. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. This is so exciting." And he said, "There's more." She said, "What else could there be?" And he says, "Come back in the boat." She comes back in the boat, and he puts on a tank, and he shows her how to dive. And together they go diving below the surface, deep down to the ocean floor. And under the ocean floor, she finds a wreck. And in that wreck, you guessed it, is a treasure chest. Together they pull the treasure chest up onto the boat and open it up. And he says to her, "How did you find the treasure?" And she says, "We dived down. You taught me how to put the tanks on. That's how we found the treasure." He said, "No." She said, "I don't know. We looked in the right spot." He said, "Nope." He said, "It's simpler than that." She goes, "Oh, I trusted you and I came out in the boat." He says, "No, not that. I left the person who made me feel secure, the person I was safe with, at the beach and came out. No, not that." "I don't know," she says. He looks at her and he says, "You stopped listening to the experts. You stopped listening to all the people who told you there was nothing to fix. You stopped listening to all the people who told you you should just be grateful for what you have. And you embraced your own adventure. That's how you found the treasure. You stopped listening to all the people who told you you were wrong. And you listened to the heart and your soul as it cried out for the adventure. That's your journey. There's another place to go. Don't get stuck. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about what your next adventure is. And whatever you do not listen to the experts, even if their name's Dov Baron. Don't listen to the experts. Follow your heart. Follow your soul. It is the ultimate personal, professional development leadership tool you'll ever have. Till next time, Dov Baron, Full Monty Leadership, saying, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about your next adventure. Dov Baron, out.